Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome on in. It's another edition of the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker, here on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, streaming on 1069thefan.com and the 1069 The Fan mobile app. Also on YouTube, The Fan KLGN. That's where you can find us on YouTube. If you're a real glutton for punishment and listening to us is just not quite enough, you actually have to see us. Yeah. Then that's where you go. And that'll do it.
Basically.
Yeah. We're there. A couple different places to watch and to follow along, and always love to have you along for the ride. And, of course, if you want to text in, the Young Power Sports of Logan text line is open, 435-339-0321 if you want to chime in. Reminder, another shortened show today, as The Fan is your local home for the NCAA tournament. First four games, the second portion of the first four, taking place this afternoon. Those will tip off at about 4:30. Well, the broadcast will start at about 4:30, and then the tip-off shortly after that. And doubleheader tonight. And tomorrow and Friday, we won't be here. On the air, at least.
Yeah.
Because
I won't even be here in the valley.
Wall-to-wall coverage here on The Fan with the NCAA tournament starting at 10 a.m., going all day long and into the night. But we'll still try to do some things, some unique content to update you on what's going on with the Aggies on our YouTube channel, The Fan KLGN. Because, Jason, you're leaving bright and early tomorrow morning to head to San Diego.
It won't be bright, but it'll be early.
You will be out before the sun is up, yes.
Yeah, I will beat the sun to the airport. And, heck, I might beat the sun to San Diego, to be honest.
So we're trying to get you there in time for the Utah State press conference and their practice, which will take place on Thursday, early afternoon, late morning in San Diego.
It's like 11:40-ish. Like sometime in the 11 o'clock hour is when Utah State will have its press conference with an open practice immediately after. So if you're heading down to San Diego, and I'm pretty sure it's just straight up open to the public as far as I'm aware. I don't even know if you need a ticket to get in. You might, or maybe if you show like session
I saw
ticket.
some stuff from San Diego State fans trying to get a crowd of Aztecs there to boo the Aggies
Really?
In their open practice.
Why would you do that? For the good of the conference.
Which, I don't know, maybe that helps the Aggies get ready for their matchup with Villanova.
They should be cheering for Utah State against Villanova. Utah State should have I don't expect San Diego State fans to like get up and get rowdy and be doing cheers with the herd, but like when Utah State scores, clap and be like, cheer a little bit.
That's a member of our current conference and a member of our future conference.
Yeah, so like you don't need to go all out and wear the Aggie blue and paint your face and you can do the "I believe we will win" chant. Like that's a San Diego State thing that they do a lot.
Yeah, they do that.
Or at least they did at one point. I haven't heard them do it in a while.
Yeah,
the show kind of died.
The show did kind of die. They did do it in the championship game, but it was like weird. It was like later after the game had already started for a while.
I did not hear it.
It was like a combination of the band and a few students who were there.
It happened.
It was very abbreviated and it was not very loud.
Because I've seen ones where back when Utah State and San Diego State were going back and forth. Like 3 straight years in the title game, you'd have one of the two student sections. I don't remember who would, one of them would do it first, and then the other one would do it. And they try to be competing. Who's doing it louder and all this kind of stuff. So that was nice. But yeah, the show really lost its luster. Obviously, San Diego State fans remain really loud. And heck, as I said, it was probably a 60-40 crowd for San Diego State in that championship game. But yeah, Utah State student section remains undefeated.
Yes, that's true. Let's quick hit something up on the text line because a reminder, we don't have a lot of time that we'll be here with you until about 4:27. But 8968 sent this in before the show. Just read something a bit strange on YouTube. It said Villanova upset by 9th seed Utah State and give a good amount of the game. Did I miss something, or are they going back to the future? So it must have been somebody projecting what they thought would happen.
Yeah, maybe Link, or if you know exactly what. My guess would be.
And how do you read something on YouTube? Maybe they have a graphic.
It's possible.
Yeah,
you can. There's stuff you can read. But yeah, if it was a video or a post, something like that, it was probably something to the effect of projecting what they think will happen. You also have, this happens way more with college football. You'll try and search the game, and some random person did like a college. The college football video game simulations,
acting
like that's the game.
This is how it played out.
Yeah, I don't see that as much with college basketball for a couple of different reasons. But yeah, it was probably just somebody projecting and doing their bracket and acting like, they knew. It's kind of like when people used to do CBS and ESPN have both done like reveal shows of their bracket, their version of the bracket, but acting like it's basically the real one. Like, here's this team, they're an 8 seed and they're in this region, and look at how tough this path is for them, or look at how easy this path is for them. It's like, that ain't the bracket, son.
Yeah, no.
Like CBS, I think, once did that on a Sunday morning, and they had the Selection Sunday show like Sundays. People thought the bracket was being released early because they were doing it like that. We'll talk about the bracket a little bit later and how interesting kind of this bracket was in terms of how predictable it was and how in line the selection committee actually was with pretty much all of the bracketologists. But we want to get into kind of our main topic here, and that is Utah State's spring football.
Yeah, officially underway yesterday. Today it's pro day. A lot of these Aggies who are trying to, get a shot to play in the NFL, having their pro day today. So a lot of that's going on up on campus. But it's a chance to look at what could spring look like for the USU football team, because it opened today. It will go up until they're going to have 15 different practice sessions over the course of the spring. And on Saturday, April 18th at noon, that's when they're going to be doing their spring showcase for the fans. It will be an opportunity to watch the team and interact with players. It's not just, hey, show up and get autographs. Sounds like they will do something, some kind of a scrimmage or showcase for the fans on April 18th. But they started practices yesterday, and this is a team that's got a lot of roster turnover, but a lot of the coaches are the same. There's still a good number of players who are on this team, who were on the team last year, who understand the drill, understand what's asked of them, and the coaches understand who they are and what's necessary. So I think there's got to be a big difference this spring than last spring, Jason, because that coaching staff was still trying to figure out guys' names, let alone what they're capable of on the field. Yeah,
they had to do basically, this big old emergency scouting, not really emergency, but like just volume scout your whole team, then, figure out who's going to stay, then figure out who you're picking up in the portal. They also had to go through spring ball knowing that they were going to lose some of the players from spring ball. They did end up losing some. It wasn't as catastrophic as recent years had been, at least so far as we can tell. There weren't a whole lot of projected starters that ended up leaving in the transfer portal, but still, that was a real rush for Bronco Mendenhall, for their staff. And now, even though there's a almost similar-ish level of turnover, like they're bringing in, I think, 39 newcomers, basically 40 newcomers to this new roster. Of course, that's not quite the 70 they had last year.
Yeah.
That number fluctuated from 75 to 80.
Yeah.
And it depended on whether or not you counted mission kids and things like that.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of roster turnover in this one, including a lot of starters. That's where it's maybe more comparable, where they did have 20 or 30 more newcomers last year, but similar number of starters. You were replacing a similar level of production, at least in some areas. Quarterback, you're basically replacing the entire room. Well, you are replacing the entire room. There's not a single snap coming back.
Nope.
Single snap.
Well,
technically the only passes that are coming back are
one of the wide receivers.
Yeah, one of the wide receivers, and technically the punter, because he threw one or two passes. But from the quarterback position, strictly speaking, you're not returning anything other than some gadget passes and trick plays. Running back room is actually probably where there's the most returning snaps, but a wide receiver, you're returning one guy. On the offensive line, you're returning your interior offensive line, but you got to replace the tackles. You're replacing essentially the entire tight end room. They're inventing a new position to help make up for what they lost in the tight end room. Defensive line, you're mostly a new defensive line. Linebackers, about half and half, and then the defensive backs, about half and half, as far as being able to have some returning production, but also a lot of newcomers. So there's basically something to look for at every single position group. If you're Utah State, some positions are going to get more attention than others. I think there's going to be a lot more attention on the quarterback room and on the offensive line than there's going to be on the defensive tackles and the linebackers. Not to say that some of those position groups are worth more than others, but for a lot of reasons, the offensive line needing to vastly improve with storylines of the quarterback room, some position groups are going to get more attention than others. From the outside, though, I imagine from the inside, they're going to be getting a lot of equal treatment there.
Yeah. So there are a lot of key positions to monitor, to see how they progress, to see how the team comes together. Some of the newcomers, do they gel well? Are they going to be able to step in and be leaders, some of them? Or the guys coming back, like how do they build on the success that they started last year? You got 9 returning starters, 24 returning lettermen, and guys who played significant minutes and significant snaps for this team. But Bronco Mendenhall was able to share some of his thoughts about getting spring practice started. So this is very early in the process. This is more a reflection on, how did winter workouts, how have they gone, getting guys on campus, what are we looking for now that spring practices are getting underway. And so these are some of Coach Bronco Mendenhall's thoughts about his spring football team as they move into their next chapter for this 2026 football season.
Just overall assessment of the first day back.
Oh man, I love our team. It's always fun when the team is excited to play football, to be together. Coaches as well, when you have a staff and you have a whole organization where not only developing young people, but playing the game is what they think they were born and put on the planet to do. It's just fun and really contagious. Clearly a different first day than a year ago. The schemes, the program, the consistency, the experience, the expectations, it feels much different than year one, but it also feels really close to just bowl prep for Washington State. Even though we've been through an off season and we have a new roster, we will have replaced 52% of our roster, which is an amazing thing in college football now, and pretty typical. It feels like the same team, the same principles, just with new faces, but it feels really close to last season. So I view that as a good thing in terms of just mindset and experience.
Can you talk about winter workouts?
Yeah, our off season is really demanding. The integration of new players is essential in today's world of the transfer portal and having them to come together as quickly as possible, knowing now there's only one transfer window. So this is basically our team, other than some freshmen coming in the summer. And so a lot of the things that teams save to do for the summer or used to save to do to bring their team together, those are happening now. So our demand creation was really high. The amount of volume of training was really high. The camaraderie, excellent. The team building, I felt really good about. And that just manifested in day one. So really positive.
Would it be fair to talk about the growth that this team has made over the last year, now that you're into year 2 and your system is being implemented?
Yeah, I think the growth is always through expectations and points of reference. So in our approach of preserving the core, that means retaining the majority of your team. And those were 13 game starters in many cases that have been with this program for a year. Retaining those players is the essential part of being able to stack consistency and culture and schematic improvements. After you've done that, then adding the new players, they just assimilate in and they then learn the way that we do it here. And that's much different and better than starting over with an entirely new team without the existing carryover. So in my opinion, the most crucial part of this era of football is retaining your existing roster.
2 more practices this week. What's the goal for this group? What are you trying to accomplish this week?
Yeah, improvement every day. So there's technical improvement daily, there's effort improvement daily, there's tactical improvement daily. There's also being really clean within the rules of engagement, meaning that spring is super valuable. Maintaining your health of your roster is also super valuable. And there's always a toggle there of having a really competitive spring practice. Doesn't seem justified when you start losing players through injury. And so making sure that the rules of engagement within a program and the maturity and the expectations are really clean, while, to your point, the technical, the tactical, the cultural, and the effort is improving. And that really is, some talk about 1% daily, some talk about 10% daily. we have significant markers we look to just hit and make sure we're not repeating the same practice at the same standard. And so growth is expected, and the feedback our team gets, feedback's a gift in our program, and they'll get that between now and our next practice, and they'll be better the next time.
So there's Bronco Mendenhall, head coach of the Utah State football team, sharing some of his thoughts. And it's a lot of stuff that's typical Bronco Mendenhall fashion about effort and culture and working hard. But certainly some of the things that stood out to me was just his comments on this year compared to last. And just they're building on what was already the foundation that was already laid last year. So I'm encouraged by that. He does have some new coaches at some significant positions. So that'll be interesting to see kind of their thoughts, and we'll try to touch base with them over the course of these spring practices. But just building on what was already put in place last year. And a lot of these guys who are here understand that now. They understand what's expected of them at this point, and then that can be taught to others. Whereas last year, there were a few guys that understood it, but they were the New Mexico transplants. And so how much value would you give them in February and March versus now you've got 52% of your roster who went through this last year, and they now can help teach and other people and let them understand what those expectations are now for Utah State football.
Yeah, it's every little advantage that you can possibly get. Like, is it a massive thing that you have that? Not necessarily. Is it an important thing and a helpful thing? Absolutely. Just because you were, it was like last year in shutting down spring ball and all that. Like, did it really help? Like, did shutting down fall camp really help? Maybe, maybe not. We went over that discussion all the time. But Bronco Mendenhall said he's going to try everything. Not that this was a specific emphasis. It's just something like, to be a second-year head coach. It's just something that's kind of happened, obviously. But it is something that will help. It is something that will help the program grow. And, time and time again, last season, as the Aggies were kind of being up and down and struggling, I've pointed out over and over again that Bronco Mendenhall has tended to be a little mediocre, sometimes even bad, in first years. He's had two teams, of the four teams that he's taken over, BYU, Virginia, New Mexico, and Utah State. Two of them missed a bowl game. One of them went 2-10. Two of them barely made a bowl game. But in year two of at least two of those, because he didn't make it to a year two in New Mexico, and he's just now entering year two at Utah State. But at BYU and Virginia, he made massive improvements. And so this is the year that we need to see those improvements, because I've pointed that out as a historical trend, but we don't know if that past is going to be a predictor of the future. There are a lot of differences between when Bronco Mendenhall was in his second year at BYU and when he was in his second year at Virginia versus what he has to encounter this year. Like, with those teams, he wasn't returning only 52% of his roster. He was returning a decent chunk of it. He'd lose maybe a quarter of his roster to graduations.
Right. So he's probably returning 75%. And a good number of those instances, he was probably, and I have to go back and look at this, but with that many guys coming back, then he's going to have returning players, starters at key positions. Yeah. And he'll have some returning starters at some key positions, but this team has to figure out some really important positions that are unknown right now.
Yeah, he's got to figure out quarterback. He's got to figure out two important aspects of his offensive line. He's got to figure out essentially an entire wide receiver room. He's got to figure out, again, like half of his secondary, half of his linebacker room, his entire edge rusher room. Like, there are a lot of things that really need to be worked on, and he's further ahead now than he was last year. And last year he managed to get that. He managed to drag that team to a bowl game. All the different crap they had to deal with, self-inflicted and otherwise, they got to a bowl game. Now that you start at a further ahead, in the marathon that could be a college football season, you're starting on mile 2 or 3 as opposed to like mile -1 or -2.
Right, you're just getting off the bus.
So that there is a spot where they're ahead, so you can try and get a couple more wins. At the very least, maybe even trying for a Pac-12 championship. Kind of on that end, 2444 texting in saying, should we expect a bowl team again? year one in the pack. And I think, yes, you absolutely should. As I'm talking about Bronco Mendenhall taking a step in year two, that means a bowl game at minimum. Like, and honestly, even then, if it's another 6-6 season, another 6-7 season, barely getting to a bowl game and then getting blown out in the bowl game, which would be like 3 or 4 years in a row of that happening, because the last few years of the Blake Anderson era, went to 2 straight bowl games, got blown out by Georgia State and Memphis, missed a bowl game in the kind of year from hell that was Nate Dreiling. Not that it was on Nate Dreiling, but just a lot of reasons that didn't go right. On. And then you get back to a bowl game, but you get blown out by Washington State in a game where you never really were competitive, outside of like the first drive and a half, maybe. You can't have that happen again, because then at that point, it's like your program is just not making any progress. You are stuck in eternal mediocrity. And a coach who you brought in to rebuild not just the culture, but also the on-field product, will have essentially been equal to his predecessor that you're comparing him to. You're not comparing him to Nate Dreiling. You're comparing him to Blake Anderson.
Yeah.
And while you can talk about the culture, and I think there would definitely be an improvement there, he would, in terms of on-field success, if he goes 2 straight years of barely making a bowl game and getting blown out or even just losing, what have you done? You've paid a ton more money for Bronco Mendenhall so that he can do the exact same thing as Blake Anderson. It's like, if that's what he ends up doing, that is a cause for concern, because we can't throw out all the same, well, he's improving and it's year one and all that. All those excuses are out the door now. Like, I granted him a lot of slack last year, and this year it's going to go away. Like, he's not going to get that same slack. Like, if he goes 7-5, okay, it's an improvement. We can work with improvement.
Sure, yeah.
And if he does any better, then obviously he'll be really hitting on a lot of those goals. But you need to see improvement. Like, and
if they go 7-5, that means they've beaten some good teams.
Yeah. So beating some good teams.
This is not an easy schedule next year.
It's not. So, and last year they did decently well against schedule. They showed some improvement, and they finally beat a bowl team for like the first time in like 2 or 3 years. So that were a team with a winning record. So for Bronco Mendenhall, there has to be improvement. It can't just be a bowl game, because again, that is the minimum. That is if you make a bowl game, we can forgive most anything else, because that's the minimum standard. Assuming you're like in year one, or if things have kind of gone wrong and there's injuries and whatnot, like that's the bare minimum of, if things kind of go wrong and it's a rocky season, if you meet that, you've kind of done enough. But now that we're reaching the point where he needs to be making progress, even if incremental, getting to the minimum isn't enough anymore. And you got to start showing that improvement.
Yeah. Is a bowl in the cards for Utah State? Sure.
Oh, absolutely. It should be.
Absolutely. It's there. Idaho State, Troy, Texas State, Colorado State is going to have some transition. Those are some that, Oregon State had a rough year last year. So there's some teams that are definitely beatable. But then there's going to be some games where the Aggies might have to punch above their weight a little bit. Can they get revenge against Washington State? Can they beat San Diego State? They had Boise State on the ropes last year. Can they finally get past the Broncos?
Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting schedule for Utah State. And of course, there's the flex game at the end of the season that's still to be determined. What's going to be with Boise State, at least projected.
Yeah.
But so it's an interesting schedule. But it's really kind of still hinges on how things happen in the spring and in the summer, developing these specific key position groups that we still have big questions about.
Yeah. Now, if you're talking about should we expect it as a matter of optimism or pessimism, you should expect one. This team is going to be good enough, I think. That is based on a lot of assumptions right now. But looking at the transfer class they brought in, there's a lot of players to like. And, there are some question marks. How good is the quarterback room? Do the transfers they bring on the offensive line? Like, that is a massive question. Because, if you give last year's team a competent offensive line, they win 8 games.
Yeah.
You return 3 starters. Do those 3 returning starters make notable improvements? We've seen that happen before. Do they do it again? And then do the incoming transfers, make a notable increase over what they had last year? That's a massive question for that position group, among many other questions they have answered. But there should be room for optimism.
And that's going to do it for us on our over-the-air portion of our show today. But stick around because there's a lot more to discuss on our YouTube page on the Fan KLGN. We'll keep the conversation going there on YouTube. Stick around.
Jewelry, we know what love is.
I just want to remind you about the Best of Northern Utah contest that continues until March 25th. Voting opened on the 11th, but it ends on the 25th. So you have a chance to go in and vote on your favorite businesses, your favorite services, doctors, dentists, whatever. Have a chance to vote once a day for as many different categories as you want, once per day. Presented by Alpine Cleaning and Restoration. Your chance to support the local businesses that you believe in, the places you recommend to friends and family. So just log on, bestofnorthernutah.com, cast your votes, and do it once a day, if you can, if you want, between now and March 25th. So continuing on the discussion, Utah State football opening spring practice yesterday. They're doing their pro day today. And we've talked about, this team has some real areas of focus that we're curious about. some key positions that are unknown, but both of us feel like this is a team that could be bowl bound. Based on how the team improved at the end of last year, has me believing in this coaching staff and what they can do with their players. There's some games on here on their schedule that, I don't know if the Aggies can get those games, but based on how this coaching staff developed their players and gave them a chance late in the season, I think this Utah State team can be bowling and should be bowling. Yeah, I think that's the base expectation, is that this team should be a bowl eligible team.
Yeah, a lot of learning regarding this team is going to be done in early October. September is probably going to be a month that goes pretty much chalk. They're hosting Idaho State in the season opener. Then they've got to go to Washington, to Utah. Couple of bye games against some good power conference teams. Will there be openings for wins? We'll see. I haven't really checked in on Washington and Utah's prospects. I know the Utes have a new coach. How does the post Cal Whittingham, era go? They really believed in Morgan Scalley enough that they pushed out the best thing that has literally ever happened to the University of Utah athletics department, not just the football program, the entire athletics department. So we'll see if Scalley was worth that bet.
Yeah.
Because they pushed out Cal Whittingham because they were afraid they were going to lose Scalley. But yeah, then you host Troy. That's a team that it is a losable game. It's kind of on the realm of UTEP, where that was a game that, granted, UTEP didn't end up having a great season, but it was one where it's like, we're not sure, could go either way. The optimistic is that they beat them, and that's kind of where that Troy game is. But then you get two really tough games at Boise State, home against Washington State, two of your toughest conference games on the schedule. So a lot of learning. Like, if the Aggies win one or both of those games, they're a conference contender. If they lose both of those games, then they're going to be, on the edge of bowl eligibility. But there are enough winnable games to get to bowl season. But Utah State didn't hire Bronco Mendenhall to be on the edge of bowl eligibility. They hired him to win games like at Boise State, against Washington State, at San Diego State. They hired a guy that was going to be able to get the team improved enough to win those games. And so that's what the mission should be for the Aggies.
Yeah, and looking at this football team, yes, we have questions, legitimate questions that most people should have. 39 newcomers. It's a lot of new faces, but that includes 27 four-year transfers. So there are guys who are experienced and understand what it means to prepare and compete at the collegiate level right now.
Yeah.
And these are guys who have experience getting snaps. Maybe not all of them getting a lot of snaps. Not all of those are regular starters and regular contributors. But there's a good number of them, and guys who come from programs where they have had time on the field, and they get to develop that and bring that experience with them to Utah State.
Yeah, and part of the reason why I was fairly optimistic, or am fairly optimistic about some of these guys, is it feels like they've brought in more experience than they typically do. Because as you know,
yes,
not everybody has experience, but seemingly just kind of based off offhand recollection, it's more experience than normal. Like, normally every single power conference transfer is somebody who's played like 5 snaps in his career. They bring in several players who have had a decent amount of experience, even at the power conference level. I'm going to go through a mix of guys who are at the power conference level and not, but Antonio Blewett, he's a cornerback coming in from North Dakota, has a lot of experience, played 500 plus snaps. Asher Cunningham, 700 plus snaps, linebacker at Elon. Marky Grant, in my opinion, one of the most underrated incoming players. This is a guy who graded out really well as a cover corner at Wyoming, and he was, I think, either a freshman or a sophomore. Like, he was a very young player, basically playing in his first year, and had some, pretty good gradings from Pro Football Focus. That's not the end-all, be-all, but still graded out well as a corner, as a cover corner, played 300-plus snaps as a freshman at Wyoming. He's coming in, very likely going to, compete for the starting job. McKay Hillstead didn't have much experience at a power conference, but comes from BYU.
Yeah. Had the benefit of training and resources and competition against other quality players who competed at a good level in the Big 12.
Yeah, then you got David Kabongo. He's a safety coming from Oklahoma State. Has, played a decent number of snaps with Oklahoma State. Chapman Lewis, not a whole lot of snaps last year as a safety at Texas Tech, but was a full-time starter for Texas Tech a couple of years ago. This last year was largely impacted by injury. There's also Sesi Vailahi, 100-plus snaps at running back. Harrison Taggart, who's had a couple of seasons as a rotation linebacker, both at BYU and then last year at Cal. So, you're talking about almost needing two hands to talk about the power conference transfers who have experience at the power conference level, mixed with a decent number of, a group of 5 players who have good experience at either the G5 or in some cases the Division II or FCS level. Because you got guys like Jordan Pendleton, Javon Robinson, Tavili Tuitama. I think I butchered his name, but I didn't even mention Eli Wood. He's another power conference guy where he was playing. He played 250 snaps, wide receiver at Virginia last year. I mentioned Antonio Blewett, Asher Cunningham, Jeremiah Holmes, 500-plus snaps as an edge rusher. Adonis Jackson, Mississippi Valley State, 400-plus snaps. So a lot of guys they're bringing in that have experience at FCS, Division II, FBS, Power 5, all of those different levels, they have guys with experience. And there's guys who haven't played as much. There are guys, Rex Haynes comes in. He played only a handful of snaps. You got Chewy Wade, coming in as potentially one of your offensive tackles. He didn't play a whole lot last year, just 4 snaps. Another one of your potential offensive line, incoming offensive tackles, John Randall coming in from Purdue, only played a handful of snaps, most of those on special teams. So there are guys that are your typical, we didn't play at the Power 5, so they're transferring down.
Just looking for opportunity to play.
There are those players there, but you're mixing that with some guys who already have that experience, and so it's just getting them up to speed. There are guys who are clearly talented enough to play at that power conference level that are transferring to Utah State that could become all conference guys. Like Chapman Lewis could be an all Pac-12 guy. That's a likely possibility for a guy like that. And you got a bunch of wide receivers who have a chance. Of course, you mentioned newcomers. I'm basically treating Dimmick Starling as a newcomer. I know he was on the roster last year, but was injured all of last year. So it's kind of like NBA Rookie of the Year rules type stuff
Ben
there.
Simmons, part 2.
Yeah, so there are a lot of transfers, I think, to be excited about. And there are varying levels of excitement. I really love the additions for the secondary. You've got multiple power conference transfers at safety. You're bringing back Brevin Hamblin. Mentioned Marky Grant, Blewett. I need to double check. The pronunciation's probably on here on how to say his name. It's somewhere around here. I've got too many
One
papers.
of us will have it, maybe.
Yeah, Eric might be able to find it before me.
It's Blewett.
Is it Blewett? Okay.
Yeah.
Thought I had seen that name before. I knew how to pronounce it. But yeah, so they have several cornerbacks and safeties. Cunningham is probably one of my favorite for linebacker at edge rusher. Pick any 2 of the 5 they brought in as maybe your favorites.
They loaded up on that position.
They really they lost basically everything, but they loaded up a bunch of different players. So I think especially defensively, there's a lot to be excited about with some of the incoming players. And then it's just about sorting things out on offense as well. Like the quarterback position. A lot of people are pretty much handing the starting job to McKay Hillstead, and I don't really think that's unwarranted. He is the most talented quarterback. He is the most experienced quarterback. So he's got basically the 2 most important things to being a starting quarterback at the college level over anybody else.
Yeah.
So that makes him the most likely starter. He'll face some competition.
But it's pretty much a wide open competition.
Yeah, it is. He's, everyone's going to go in on relatively equal ground.
Yep.
I don't think people are giving Grady Brosterhouse enough credit for his potential.
No, yeah, he's going to be in the mix.
Yeah.
You got the 2 freshmen that are in the mix.
The 2 freshmen. I know Brady Goodman will not be part of spring ball. He's finishing up high school. Not everybody is able to pull off the early enrollment. So he'll be joining the team in the summer. But Caleb Maryland, and they added another high school player whose name I hadn't seen before. He was on the roster. His name was Crew. Oh, goodness gracious me. That name. How am I supposed to say that? Is it even on here? Ketchakarni. Crew Ketchakarni. We're going to go with that.
Okay.
Maybe I should have double checked that before coming live on air. Luckily, that pronunciation guide is there.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's comes from Weber High School. So he's a freshman. So they got
6 foot, 190 pounds, out of Pleasant View, Utah.
Yeah.
So
so you'll have 2 freshmen on the spring roster, 3 freshmen by the summer and fall roster. But to me, it's going to come down to one of McKay Hillstead or Grady Brosterhouse. I think that's going to be your 1-2 on the depth chart. Maybe Caleb Maryland or Brady Goodman. A lot of people are really elevating Caleb Maryland over Brady Goodman without much thought, because to me, those two are very equal prospects.
I agree. I know that there's probably more film and more highlights for Caleb Maryland, and maybe that's what people are latching onto.
And his tend to look more impressive with the arm talent that he has.
Yeah, but Goodman's a big body, and he's got a big arm, and he's athletic too. He's not slow of foot.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested to see what fall camp looks like when that starts to happen. But Utah State doesn't necessarily have to declare their starter in the spring.
No, and I don't think they should.
It will help, but it's not necessary. I think the guys who are here now, obviously they get a leg up, but most everybody's here.
Yeah, like if Utah State ends up handing the starting job to McKay Hillstead outright, as in Bronco says it's going to be McKay Hillstead and nobody else, and he's, and there'll be a difference between that and saying Hillstead is a starter right now and he takes the first team reps right now for the spring game. Like, there's a difference between that and him just saying, yeah, McKay Hillstead's in, it's not going to be anybody else. Like the way he was talking about,
like he did with
Bryson Barnes last year.
Right.
Which in that case, it was, a good thing because, he was the expected returner and you wanted him to be good. But even with that, like, if you have a starter named completely outright and far and away, like, especially in an open quarterback battle like this, it almost makes you worry about the guys behind him. Because if McKay Hillstead earns it outright, it's either a really good thing in favor of McKay Hillstead and that he's just that far and away good, or it's a small indictment on, like, well, you got 2 freshmen, neither of whom are ready, or 3 freshmen by fall and summer and fall, 3 freshmen, none of whom are ready. And then Brosterhouse, who's supposed to be another veteran who doesn't have a whole lot of snaps, but has a decent arm, who is decently athletic, is similar in the broad strokes to Bryson Barnes. It would mean that he isn't ready. And to be honest, when I've watched film of him, there's some inconsistencies that show up on film that didn't necessarily show up in his highlight package when I first watch it. So
whomever it's going to be,
yeah.
I don't see a Bryson Barnes clone in this group right now. I mean, Goodman and Maryland and I guess this new one that showed up, Ketchikarney. We have to really see what they look like, but I don't really see a Bryson Barnes clone. So
and that's not a bad thing, because
but what I'm trying to illustrate with that is that the offense can't rely on the quarterback to just be a gutsy player who's going to stick his nose in there and make a bunch of things happen. I'm not saying I don't think any of these guys can't scramble and create things, but Bryson, he was a physical guy that just got in there and mixed things up to keep moving things forward for his team. A little bit reckless with his body. So I think that I know Bronco loves that kind of a quarterback. So I think they're going to be asked to do some similar things, but I think the offense is going to be a little bit more intentional with its passing game. There's going to be some designed run stuff for the quarterback position, but it's not going to be to the same level like we saw with Bryson Barnes.
Yeah, your leading rusher isn't, and I don't think really should be, your quarterback. Like last year with Barnes, it was justified. There are times when your quarterback should be your leading rusher in both attempts and or yards, depending on how many yards he gets, over the sack yardage he loses, which for Barnes, that was a lot of sack yardage lost. But, if it's Hillstead, like Brosterhouse, I could see maybe him running the ball a ton. But to me, the best case scenario is where Hillstead ends up being the quarterback, where he has the best potential as a thrower. He can scramble, but it should be more along the lines of, like, watch Micah Alejado. Like, how often does he scramble? Not very much. When you're that small, like, even if you're athletic, you got to be careful about when you run. Mm-hmm. You got to be careful about where you run and how you run. You've got to be, mindful of how you're taking care of your body when, in the end, it's just math. If you weigh 190 pounds and 320 lands on top of you, I don't care how tough you are. Broken bones don't care if you're tough.
Yeah.
So you've got to be smart about that. So Utah State would have to lean a lot more on its running backs. It'd have to lean a lot more on its offensive line to lead that run game. And even in some cases where there's a designed run, obviously they're going to have to do better because Bryson Barnes could create some yards after contact. McKay Hillstead will not create yards after contact with his legs. He's going to create yards through his elusiveness and in many cases just catching the defense off guard by saying, oh yeah, I'm athletic enough to run, by the way. Sucks he didn't look at the scouting report, but I can do that. And, having a game every now and again where he gains 40 yards on the ground, but other games he only gains like 5 or 6 because he doesn't run the ball. And so that's where the run game is going to need a big improvement. I think last year it was really lacking in a lot of ways. It was way too spotty. Like Miles Davis is a good running back, but the offensive line struggled to create enough holes, struggled to create, in short yardage, they were terrible.
Yeah, to ask the running backs, we need 2 yards on this play. Like in the defense knows it, the offense knows it, everybody in the arena knows it. Can you get 2 yards on this play? And they were wildly inconsistent. If it wasn't Bryson Barnes, if you ask anybody else, can you get 2 yards on this play? More often than not, they couldn't.
Even if it was Bryson Barnes, more often than not, he wasn't getting it. There were plenty of games where they lost because Bryson Barnes would run it. Everyone knew he was going to run it.
Downs,
he'd get stuffed for no gain or not enough of a gain or a negative.
So this Rhino package that they're putting out there now, they're going to lean on the running backs or those running the ball and lead blockers to create more of those opportunities. So it's less on the quarterback to do that.
Yeah, and I think with what they have brought in with these blockers, fullbacks. Essentially fullback with Remanowski, and they brought in a couple other people, and I think they even converted, was it Tyler Mazdea, who's a former defensive tackle. He's going to be, I don't know if he's here in spring ball, but was listed 290 last season. Will probably drop a bit of weight to get down to like 250 or 260, depending on how much weight it can be a lot easier for those defensive tackles to lose weight because it's easier to lose weight when you're a professional athlete than gain weight.
True.
So to get him on the right diet plan and get down to 250, 260 to be able to play that, again, fullback, tight end type position, inline blocker. And that's going to be a help, I think, for the run game. I personally kind of love fullbacks. I wish more people use them because they can be just so useful in lead blocking and helping. And if they're versatile enough, then you're not, penalized for taking a wide receiver off the field. It's kind of like a tight end in a lot of ways. If you have a versatile one, teams can't just bank on you running the ball when you put a fullback on the field.
Yeah, it's an old school style that you don't see very often anymore. So is it going to be unique enough where everything that's old is new again? Not very many other teams are doing this, so they're not used to it. So Utah State has some advantage there. Or will it not have some success? And there's a reason why a lot of other schools have gone away from utilizing it. I tend to believe that it's more of the former rather than the latter. Just that I think that there is a realm here where Utah State can do something that is different and unique in this style. And it really achieves a couple of things. It helps Utah State secure short yardage downs, and it protects your quarterback from throwing him into harm's way all the time. It gives you more snaps with your quarterback, gives him more opportunities to be under center to deliver the ball where it's needed to help your team score points.
Yeah, and there's a couple of ways that they can kind of do this in some really interesting ways, because like with it being the old school, where it kind of helps is that most base defenses now are not a 3-4 or a 4-3. They're 3-3-5 or 4-2-5. So many of them are essentially turning one of those linebackers into a defensive back, maybe a defensive back who's a little bit bigger and a little more like a linebacker, essentially a tweener, or the better version, someone who's just versatile.
Right.
Someone who can kind of play both, someone who can defend in the box but also play out in space. But with Utah State, they're bringing an old school style where defenses would want to play more of the 4-3 or more of that traditional base defense. So if you put that lineup out there and you're facing a 3-3-5 or a 4-2-5, you suddenly have an advantage in running the ball, where you've got bigger guys out there going against a smaller unit. And of course, defenses aren't just going to sit there and take that. They're going to bring out their bigger units. But this is where I talk about versatility with the fullback. Or perhaps what they could end up doing is where if you have a fullback, it means you're not, or a fullback or tight end, or maybe in some cases both, you're taking a wide receiver off the field. But you look at Utah State's running back room, especially a guy like Javen Jacobs. They were using him as a wide receiver. Heck, he's a converted wide receiver.
Yeah.
And typically where you're going, if you want to have an extra blocker, that extra blocker is your running back. Javen Jacobs, and Miles Davis is in this too, but Utah State had terrible blocking running backs. Mind you, most running backs aren't really that great at blocking, so it's not like they're completely unique, but they weren't particularly effective as pass blockers. So say Utah State rolls out there and you're offset eye, or they have this fullback tight end, this rhino position in the backfield. You've taken a wide receiver off the field, but you run a pass play and you have Javen Jacobs going out for, a route, or Noah White. You've basically not altered the math on how many pass catchers you have on the field, but you've brought in a better blocker in the backfield for the quarterback. And that's where they can have an advantage. But at the same time, while you've not altered the math, against yourself by taking wide receivers, by taking pass catchers, you've not given up that option. You've gained the option of still being able to run. So like, say you're in a 3rd and short, and you come out when you've got that rhino on the field and the running back, you can run a pass play, still have the same number of pass catchers. You have a better pass blocker in the backfield with your rhino, or you can run short yardage where you have that rhino as the lead blocker, and you have your running back in there. So that's where the versatility of having that on the field could really play in the Aggies' advantage. It's going to depend some on the versatility of these players, but with the way Utah State is setting things up, they can have, they can cause problems for teams, with their offensive scheme, with where it's different. But also it has an old school style, but with enough modern twists that they can still do a lot with them. And that's what you hope to see from the running backs, from their, pass catchers, from the tight end position, from the rhino position. And heck, if they're in a short yardage situation, just throw Grady Brosterhouse in there. He became famous at Virginia for, the Grady Bunch, basically their version of the tush push. 6'5", 240-pound quarterback under center, 260-pound Colin Remanowski next to him, and the 210-pound Sesi Vailahi behind him. I like that short yardage package.
Yes. Yeah.
Much better than 210-pound Bryson Barnes, 180-pound Miles Davis, and maybe a tight end somewhere in sight, which was their short yardage package last year. I like the upgrade.
Yeah, big difference. A couple of texts rolling through, 9315. Jason, I don't know what it's like to have somebody land on top of you that weighs 280 pounds when you're only 150, like me. We're riding in the high school wrestling coach that has the coach, the big me. So I coach from 200 to 280, and I get it. They really can sandwich it. You got to be smart and careful. And yes, I still have to wrestle them.
I feel sorry.
Yeah. Oof. Good luck to that. Then 8632. Okay.
Did we get to 2444s?
We got that taken care of. And also Maryland for QB1. 2444. We missed one. My main concern is the offensive line. Really hope we see a big improvement there.
Yeah, like so much of Utah State's offensive improvement relies on the offensive line because Bryson Barnes made up for a lot of the offensive line struggles. But by the end of the year, they were just getting so bad that he couldn't do anything because it was, normally it's like 1, 2, 3, throw the ball. It was 1, 2. Well, there's a defensive end, there's a linebacker, and there's a defensive tackle. And what is Bryson Barnes going to do? Like, he could not run the scheme. They could not do anything. They could not run downfield passes. They could not run short yardage. They could barely run short passes because, again, it was 1, 2, and 3 stands for how many defensive tackles are, wearing Bryson Barnes shoulder pads.
Right, yes.
Like, that needs to be a massive improvement, both in pass blocking, which got a lot of attention, justifiably so, but the run blocking was spotty too. It was a little better because there were some games where they did fine, But the run blocking, as we've talked about with short yardage, like that's where the full measure of a great run blocking team will be met is like, well, when you're doing the 4-minute drill and in short yardage. And Utah State could not run the 4-minute drill and they could not run short yardage with any sort of consistency. So the 3 interior offensive linemen, Tavamotu Apawaka, I think George Miley and Jimmy Liston, I believe, are all still on that interior offensive line, unless I've mixed them up with somebody else. And then you've got the tackles, somebody new is going to come in and be those tackles. You've got to see year-to-year improvement from the interior offensive line. Like, they have to make an improvement. They have to. They cannot be the same as they were last year. They have to make noticeable improvements. And then you got to have the new tackles come in, be better than Trey Anderson and Junior Sia were, and Jake Eichhorn. Those were the 3 you had at the tackles most of the year. Mm-hmm. Those 3 did not play particularly well at the tackles. So you've got to have guys that come in and better and that are better in the interior offensive line to be better than the versions of themselves they were last year. And that's a question that I cannot answer right now, because in order to see improvements, you have to make an assumption that some of those things are going to happen. And we have no evidence to suggest that they will improve or the new guys will be better. You just have to assume they will be.
Yeah, so reminder practices underway. Started yesterday. They have their pro day today. They'll have 15 total practices, and it will conclude on April 18th. Is that the right date? Got to double check on
that's
April 18th.
That's when the spring showcase is.
That's on Saturday at noon, and it'll be they're calling it the spring showcase. So chances to see the players and interact with them then. But we'll be getting interviews with coaches and players in between then, as they have their practices. Now, practices are closed, so it's not like we can go and then come back and share our observations, but we can do interviews. So we were getting through this week with the NCAA tournament and expect to pick those up starting next week. Hey, just before we transition to a next topic, just want to remind you about Napa Auto Parts. Got batteries, headlights, wiper blades. They're all in stock right now at Napa Auto Parts. You got local service, locally owned. Chemical Guys car washes available there. Detailing kits, only $49.99. My gosh, the weather is so nice. You might want to get your car out of the driveway and get that thing detailed up nice. You can get all the details, all the products that you need they're all on sale at your locally owned Napa store from Preston to Providence. So Jason, Utah State takes on Villanova Friday, early afternoon. Kids are just getting out of school. Maybe you need to play a little bit hooky from work in the early afternoon to find that game. I think it's going to be on TNT, so it's not going to be hard to find. But as we continue to get closer and closer to this matchup, we keep looking at more and more data points, looking at these two teams, but also generally about the general field of those teams participating. Last night, we had the first games of the first 4, and there were stretches where it didn't look like they were very interesting games, but they both turned out to be really exciting finishes. Down to the buzzer, down to the final whistle, basically, Texas had a big shot at the end to win their game. And it was also exciting in the NIT last night. UNLV looked like they had a running away from it in the first half. Then they gave it up. Then they came back and got the win on the road. Got a bunch more Mountain West teams in action tonight. And so just quickly a rundown of what's on the docket today. In the first 4, you got Prairie View, A&M, and Lehigh going on right now. Miami of Ohio versus SMU. SMU stumbled into the postseason. I think they lost like 6 of their last 7 or something like that. Miami of Ohio, we know the season that they had, but they didn't really face anybody really that had a great metrics, I should say. SMU has great metrics. They played against a much tougher schedule, so this would be a really interesting showdown to see winning games, stacking wins versus playing tough competition every week.
Yeah, I think it's the first top 50 team Miami has played, and it might very well be like the top 70. Like wherever Akron is, like that's been their toughest opponent to this point, and Akron's like been flirting with being in or out of the top 70 or 80 for a lot of the year. So Miami's not played a team of this caliber this season. SMU is favored by nearly 8 points in an 11 versus 11 game. Like, there is not a whole lot of confidence from anyone that isn't a true believer in Miami of Ohio. Like, there's not a lot of confidence from anyone other than them that they're going to be able to compete in this game, let alone be able to win it.
Yeah, this is a very highly efficient offense for Miami. This is a team that can score. They've been in a lot of close games. They know how to play in tight situations. So
how many times they've been in, really tough situations against teams that weren't particularly good, which is kind of the knock against them.
Right.
True. Is that they were going, toe to toe with teams they really shouldn't be going toe to toe with. But yeah, that's almost kind of part of the charm of this team, is that whatever they do, they're usually coming out. They only have one loss the entire season. But yeah, like, they're incredibly efficient from basically anywhere. They're 5th in effective field goal percentage. They're 40th in turnover percentage. Like, they protect the ball and they shoot the ball really well. So it's just a matter of, can they do it against a team that's inside the top 200?
Yeah. Last night in the NIT, Wyoming, a couple of Mountain West teams involved. We mentioned UNLV. We'll get to that in just a second. But Wyoming on the road at Wichita State. And Wyoming made it close, but couldn't quite get it done, losing 74-70. So their season is over. And UNLV, as mentioned, jumped out to a 13-point lead at halftime. Barely held on to win that one 75-72. And Dre Gibbs Lawhorn had a big first half and then disappeared. Imagine that.
It seems like basically once, like, he was almost solely motivated by getting the Player of the Year award, and then once that was kind of out of the picture, he just disappeared and became a 13-point per game scorer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there were a lot of guys for UNLV in double figures, but, they were on the road at UC Irvine. And so they picked up the win on the road, so give them credit for that. But we'll see what they look like going forward. Tonight, a couple other games of note. Utah Valley hosting George Washington. They had that chance to win the WAC tournament. Lob play, perfect setup for Isaac Davis, former Utah State power forward, and he just couldn't put it down.
Yeah, it
felt so bad.
It was terrible, because I was watching that as I was sitting on the plane to return from Vegas. Like,
excuse me,
they'd already said, please turn your phones on to airplane mode, and I was like, not yet. Watching, I was ready with an excuse too to say, oh, this isn't live, it's just a replay of something. Nobody really cared that I was still on my phone. They don't actually check, but still, breaking the rules so that I could watch Utah Valley. And then I watched that play and I was like, oh no.
I felt sick for that guy.
Not like that. I immediately turned it off and was just like, I can't even. Had to distract myself. Just felt so bad. Not just it wasn't just the Utah Valley loss, because I was really pulling for him. Wanted them to be able to give the giant middle finger to the WAC, make the commissioner, hand them the championship trophy, and instead the WAC commissioner and all those leadership, they were probably doing a jig in their box. Like, they basically won the lottery with Utah Valley finally losing. But it also denied them their chance to be in their first NCAA tournament ever. They've still not gone, despite winning the regular season championship in the WAC, I think multiple times. They have not managed to get it done in the conference tournament. Grand Cane's had a lot to do with that. Yep. But even with Grand Cane not in the WAC anymore, they still couldn't pull it off, just in heartbreaking fashion. Utah
Valley has been perfect at home this season, 15-0, hosting George Washington, who only has 3 wins away from their home. But Utah Valley only favored by 1.5. That's on ESPN Plus, starting at 6. New Mexico hosting Sam Houston. That's at 7 on ESPN Plus. New Mexico favored by 11.5. One of the highest margins of, actually the highest margin for the day. New Mexico, that's a team that is built to go far if they want to.
Yeah, I think I think the teams from the Mountain West, that remain in this tournament should be some of the favorites. They shouldn't exclusively be, you've got a good Dayton team in the field, and St. Joseph's ain't too bad themselves, but there is some really solid Mountain West teams in this field. UNLV is kind of a chaos team if they get going. kind of made the shot at Dre Gibbs Lawhorn, but he can go off for 20 or 30 in any given day, let alone some of the other players they have. So they can be underlooked in some cases. They won on the road. But yeah, we're in New Mexico. They get to host a team in the pit. It's like, yeah, good luck. I know the fan base isn't going to be as riled up. They're not going to sell out the place, but it's still going to be the pit. It's still New Mexico. It's a tough team. So I'd expect some of these Mountain West teams to make a run.
And this is a perfect example of why the NIT is good for a team to participate. New Mexico has a lot of young players. This is a great opportunity for them to continue their development, continue to play games, and find success if they can. That just builds for their future at New Mexico if they can. Then Nevada, they play tonight. They host Murray State. That's at 8:00. Nevada favored by 8.5. Colorado State. This is one that is going to be nationally broadcast on ESPNU. The Rams hosting St. Joseph's at 9:00. Colorado State favored by 5.5 in this one.
Yeah, not sure what to make of Colorado State anymore. Finished the regular season really hot, then just weren't impressive in the tournament at all. They, escaped Fresno State, to be quite frank, and then just kind of got trounced by San Diego State. I know Fresno State was kind of an underrated team, and I know San Diego State were the runner-up, but still, for a team that finished the regular season so hot, including beating San Diego State, and heck, they probably beat Fresno State in that final stretch because they beat half the conference in their winning streak to end the season. But I can't remember off the top of my head if they did beat Fresno there. Like, they should have been better in the conference tournament, so they really lost a lot of the steam that they had going into the postseason. Now they got to get it back up again. But the positive there is that part of what helped them really in that end of the regular season was they were playing at home a lot more, especially playing at home against the better teams. Like they beat Nevada at home, they beat San Diego State at home. So they play much better at home, and so I think that's something that can help them here. Is they're hosting this game is something that should really be able to help them.
Let's see. I'm trying to figure out where UNLV goes now that they've won.
I think it's dependent on this next round. I don't know where the bracket. I think I looked up the NIT bracket, and nobody actually showed a bracket. It was just a bunch of list of here's who's playing who. So
I've got a bracket in front of me now.
Do you? Okay, that's good.
So they beat UC Irvine. I got to see who won between Tulsa and Stephen F. Austin. Let's see, because
Tulsa
that's
did.
So
Tulsa won that game.
Tulsa won that game. They were the higher seeded team, so UNLV will go to Tulsa.
Yeah, that's a tough team. That's a 27-win
That'll be
team
sometime
now.
this weekend. We don't know if that's going to be Friday or Saturday yet.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of TV times to be determined by games happening today, but yeah, that'll be a tough matchup for UNLV because that was a 27-win team against a 28-win team.
If New Mexico and Utah Valley both win, New Mexico will host Utah Valley in the next round.
That'll be an interesting one.
Yeah. Nevada, they will, let's see, George Mason and Liberty. They played yesterday.
Yeah, Liberty won.
So Nevada, if they win today, will host. You said Liberty won?
Yeah, Liberty won that
So Liberty pulled off the upset. So some of these teams, we kind of have to wait to see how these matchups go today to see when they play, again, either Friday or Saturday in the NIT. So those will again be at home arenas. And when you get to the quarterfinals, is that I think that's when it goes to Hinkle Fieldhouse, or is it just the semifinals? Then it goes to the championship will be at Gamebridge Fieldhouse for the NIT championship.
That's where the Aggies were last year for the NCAA tournament, I believe. Or no, they were in Kentucky last year. Gamebridge is where they went and beat TCU.
Oh, yes.
Or was that Sacramento? I can't remember anymore. All these places are blending together. I know I've been to 4 or 5 of these venues.
I think you're right.
It is. And Utah State went there one year, and that was one of the years I was covering them for here. But yeah, let's get to our Young Power Sports of Logan text line, actually.
Yeah.
As we have a few texts rolling in here. 8632 saying Andy Katz released his chaos bracket. He had USU in the Final Four. That's not chaos. That's going to be a reality. Go Aggies and go LIU Sharks. # fins up. Yeah, Long Island, they got long odds to beat Arizona. Although I believe it was Evan Mee who said they have the highest odds of any 16 seed of advancing, 0.4%.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah, there's a chance. We'll see. Arizona's dang good though. We'll see. I did the one bracket simulation with Evan Mia's kind of bracket sim, and it had the Aggies going to the Elite Eight once, and they were win over Purdue away from the Final Four. So we'll see. But I think Aggie fans should focus more on Villanova, because while I've fed into a lot of optimism and put out a lot of things saying, hey, Utah State has a pretty good chance to win this game, when I ran the simulation, they lost 9 out of 20 times. So let's not get
Villanova's a good team.
And it's the toughest team Utah State has faced.
Right.
On paper.
They've gone through a much more challenging schedule than Utah State has.
Yeah, they faced a lot more top-end teams. Utah State's actually faced probably about 2/3 the number of top 100 teams that Villanova has, but Utah State has not faced a top 40 team. Villanova has faced 7 top 30 teams, although they're 1-6 against top 30 teams. And Utah State's 29th. And this is by KenPom ranking.
Yeah.
Utah State's 29th in KenPom, and Villanova is 1-6 against teams in the top 30 of KenPom that are currently top 30 in KenPom.
9315, should Davis have done a bunny shot and not a dunk? No. You got a lob play and there's no one else around you. Should have been the easiest shot to make.
Yeah, the thing is he missed jump, like he jumped late, like he literally just didn't get enough verticality. So honestly, at that point, it's can you react quick enough to realize, hey, maybe I should just kind of, because if he doesn't try and like throw it in, dunk it, and he just kind of like lays it up and lets go of it, it goes in. But the kind of aggression that someone like him plays with, which is a good thing, means that you kind of have the instincts that you're not going to play like that, which again may seem bad in that very specific scenario, but there are a lot of other cases where that kind of aggression is a good thing. So it just kind of ends up being a double-edged sword where he was aggressive. Like, I'm going to throw this down and put it in. In that case, would have been nice if he didn't, but
yeah,
you know what? There's a lot of woulda, coulda, shouldas, and for a whole lot of people, that's one of them. So it's and of course, they shouldn't have been in that situation. They were leading by like 4 or 5 with like under a minute left. They shouldn't have even needed to get a last-second game-tying shot because they shouldn't have even lost the lead.
Right. They allowed a few too many late 3-point shots for Cal Baptist to get back into it.
And missed free throws, turnovers, stuff like that. It's the kind of stuff
just left the door open.
That blows the game. They shouldn't have even been in that situation to begin with. But again, woulda, coulda, shoulda.
2444. Would you guys imagine USU participating in the NIT in future years if they happen to miss the NCAA tournament?
It's hard to say because Utah State is in the similar position to San Diego State and Boise State, where it's like a NCAA tournament or bust. We're not in the consolation prize business. But they did participate in the NIT in Ryan Odom's year. It's hard to say how future coaches would respond to that. It's also hard to say how future players would respond because it is a lot of times a player-led decision, not necessarily a coach or program decision. I would lean toward, like, say it was Jared Calhoun, say it was this year, say things panned out that they didn't make it. I'd lean toward them probably playing. But it's really hard to say without knowing how such a season would be like feel-wise. Because that can kind of, the vibes can really impact them. Because like there's some teams where the vibes are fine and we're willing to go play an NCAA tournament game. And there's some teams like with Grand Canyon and Boise and San Diego State where there's a feeling that their season just really ended on a disappointment and vibes were not as great. And in San Diego State's case, the health wasn't particularly great. Then they end up turning that down. So,
yeah, I think it depends on a variety of factors. I mean, my initial gut reaction would be, yes, I think Utah State would participate in the NIT in future years, but who knows what the coach is going to be like? Who knows what the roster is going to be like? Who knows what the situation is going to be like at the end of the season? Are there injuries? Is there infighting? Is a team connected? Do they want to keep playing more? And I know I made the comment about New Mexico that this is a young team that gets extra time and extra development that could help their future. But in reality, there's no guarantee your roster, any part of your roster is going to be the same next year.
Yeah.
Like when the season's over, everyone on your roster is in the portal, whether they declare it or not. And so you would love to think that this postseason play helps build the program for the future, but there's no guarantee that they stick around for that future wearing your jersey.
Yeah. And so some of it almost depends on, like, do you have a bunch of seniors that don't have any eligibility left? Like, New Mexico's kind of a young team, but they got Aiden Albury. Bullion isn't sure if he's going to get another year of eligibility. They got several players on that team they got several players that are young, but they've got guys on the completely other end of that spectrum. UNLV is full of guys that got, this is their last year. Of course, they got some young guys. Gibbs Lawhorn has another year. Tyron Jones, a freshman, but Hamilton, he's a senior. They got a bunch of other guys that are seniors. Nevada's full of guys that are seniors. So, sometimes it can be about that. Some seniors and some guys, they're just done. They kind of want to move on with life, and that is a valid feeling to have. Like, if you've been through 4 or 5 years of college ball and you're like, you know what, I just kind of want to be done. That's perfectly fair. But then there are other guys who would rather die than give up basketball, and that's also a valid way to be approaching your life. There's not one way to approach your career or to approach life. So a lot of times it just ends up on the individual players as well.
Yeah, true. So it's kind of hard to know, just because it keeps changing. And I know there's some things going on right now. Some people saying, look at the NIT field. It's mostly all mid-majors. I mean, Cal is in there. Auburn is in there. So there's a few high major programs that are in there. Wake Forest. But most of the teams participating are mid-majors. And some people are saying, just make it a mid-major postseason tournament. And I think that's stupid.
It's stupid. I'm seeing a worryingly high number of people saying make a mid-major March Madness tournament, and that's just stupid. Like, I need people to stop trying to section off mid-majors.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of just, trying to cut out mid-majors and group of 5 and make their own playoff, instead of trying to make them their own separate division, maybe help the sport be a little bit more, have a little bit more parity among the group of 5 and the, and the power conferences. Because you know what makes the pro leagues so great? You know what made college basketball great for, 50 years? Is because the NCAA tournament kind of created parity on its own by the fact that it was chaotic, by the fact that you could get upset. Mm-hmm. One bad game, again, we talked about whether or not it's a fair way to determine a champion. It was great for parity and great for Cinderellas, and that created the March Madness. The women's March Madness tournament, aside from the fact that the way some people look at women's sports, part of its problem is that it has there's no madness. There is no magic. There is no one shining moment. It is the best teams just always win.
Yeah.
But you know what?
You really only have 3, maybe 4 teams that are always going to be good.
Yeah. And with March Madness, with college basketball, men's college basketball, one shining moment actually meant something. It meant that this is your one time that you are seen on TV, but everyone sees you shining. There's the joke about, he's going to be an accountant, come next fall, but he's draining 10 3-pointers on Kentucky. That's your one shining moment. That is college basketball. That is the mythology around March Madness. And you want to eliminate the madness.
Just so you can have more mediocre teams participate? It just doesn't make sense.
Like, it's someone who just does not understand the culture around college basketball. You want to talk about American culture, like March Madness is part of our culture, but within the sport, that is its culture. The chaos, the mid-majors. The mid-majors are what makes men's college basketball, great. Are they the best teams? No. Do they have the best players? No. Not in the kind of...
create an opportunity for them, at least give them a chance to showcase what they can do. And
for decades, they have done that. They have delivered. Everyone remembers the magical runs. Like, who was the national champion in 2006? Or can you name off all the national champions? There are people who can name off the magical runs of teams that didn't win the championship more than they can remember, who actually won the title. Like, ask people do you remember Gordon Hayward's, half court heave to almost win the championship? They're like, yeah, I remember that. And you say, well, who did they beat? Or who did they lose to? There are probably some people who couldn't answer. Most people could. It was Duke.
Yeah.
But a lot of people might not actually remember who Butler lost to, but they remember Gordon Hayward and Butler more than the actual national champion.
Or George Mason with their run.
Yeah,
or
with their run.
Just
or
a few years ago, when we had a bunch of teams that made runs.
Yeah, you had Florida Gulf Coast. They remember Florida Atlantic and San Diego State. And they remember, Sister Jean and Loyola Chicago. They remember all of these things. Like, heck, one of the guys who suggested, like, hey, make the NIT a mid-major tournament, he had a tribute to Sister Jean in his Twitter bio. It's like, what the actual heck is wrong with you? So if you want to create a tournament that is designed to showcase the best players and have the best teams advancing and the best, quality basketball and all those better teams, then March Madness isn't for you, because that's not what March Madness creates.
Yeah, go do the Crown or whatever.
Well, the Crown doesn't do it either. A single elimination tournament will not give you that thing. It will not create a fair championship and a showcase of the best talents where the best teams rise to the top every single time. That's what 7-game series and the NBA playoff format, and similar with hockey and baseball where they do that. Like, if you want that, that kind of, controlled environment where the best teams are always going to win out and the playoffs are a true showcase and, proving grounds, go watch the NBA, because that's what they have. You want to watch madness? You want to watch true chaos? You want to watch one shining moment? That's what March Madness is about. And eliminating mid-majors and telling them to go play in their own championship, you remove the magic and the madness from March. You remove the glass slippers and all that. Like, you remove everything that makes college basketball a fun, unique league and championship. Like, it's like taking a grape and turning it into a raisin. Some people like raisins, but in my opinion, they suck. And everything that's good about a grape is just removed. Like, essentially, you're trying to take March Madness, this wonderful, juicy, tasty grape, and turn it into a raisin. You can't be doing that.
Hey, before we switch and move on, just want to remind you about Mountain Valley Heating and Air. Indoor air in our area, it can be up to 5 times dirtier than outdoor air, especially during dry months, which we have certainly been experiencing lately. Dry air keeps dust and allergens floating longer, sending them deeper into your lungs, making sickness more likely. Mountain Valley Heating and Air installs high-efficiency steam humidifiers in your home that use 1 gallon of water with no waste. It improves the air quality in your home. So give them a call today, 435-753-5170, to get a free in-home air quality assessment. Again, that's Mountain Valley Heating and Air, 435-753-5170. Jason, I know you were doing a lot of analysis of the NCAA field, just looking at teams that got invites versus those who maybe didn't, or were teams seated appropriately with what we were watching with Bracket Matrix for the months and certainly the weeks leading up to Selection Sunday. It looks like this year maybe the selection committee got it pretty close to what a lot of experts were already predicting.
Yeah, it almost looked like the committee was copying the work of the bracketologists. Because if you look at Bracket Matrix, where as of today, I don't know if they've added any more, but it looked like there were 290 brackets that they got in, submitted before. Like, oftentimes on Selection Sunday, like it said, like 120, but that's just, humans having to put all that information in. So by today, they had everything 290 brackets. So I took that data and I took like the average seed of each team and created a 1 through 68 ranking. And it was very similar. They were like, I think half the teams were, according to the NCAA seed list, 1 through 68, ranked exactly the same as the way bracketologists put it. Like, there were a decent number that were up or down 1. There were a few that were down 3 or up 3. For instance, Utah State was ranked 3 spots below where Bracket Matrix had them, which ended up moving them from an 8 seed to a 9 seed. Vanderbilt was another one that was ranked 3 spots down, and I think there was another one that was, VCU was ranked 3 spots down, but Vanderbilt moved from a 4 seed to a 5 seed, although VCU, despite moving 3 spots down, they were still an 11 seed. But the thing is, when you look at everything, there were only 12 teams that were ultimately impacted by the committee having them higher or lower than where Bracket Matrix had them, which in the end is that's 6 cases of the committee disagreeing, because that was 6 times where they just swapped a couple of teams around. They moved up a seed line and they moved down a seed line. 6 teams moved up 1 seed line. Nobody moved up any more than 1. And there were 6 teams that moved down a seed line. And a couple of those were 13, 14, and 15, 16. So just scooting around a little bit in, 1 bid league territory. Mm-hmm. So, and one of the things that really stuck out to me is the fact that there was basically no snubs to the NCAA tournament. And when I look at snubs, I look at past years in Bracket Matrix, there's almost always one team that was on 90% of brackets. Like last year, West Virginia, at the time of Selection Sunday, they were actually in 100% of brackets. Though by the end, there were 254 brackets. They were in 244 of them. So there were 6 people out of 250 that didn't have them on. And West Virginia ended up missing the tournament in favor of North Carolina, who, again, their president or AD was on the committee. So, that certainly helped.
Yeah.
As much as they deny it, it helped.
I'm sure, he's got some sway.
So... But in other years, there would be someone that had 211 out of 200. The number of brackets has been going up every year. The bracketologist community is expanding. But every year, the next closest over the last 8 or 9 years there was one year where somebody was only on 65% of brackets and didn't get in. But year after year, there's somebody with 90% of brackets that didn't get in, 90%, and so on and so forth. You have to go back to 2017. Until there basically wasn't a snub. There was one team that was on 17% of brackets. So in 2017, there weren't really any snubs. That was the first team out. That's what I'm talking about. The first team out, according to Bracket Matrix. 17% of bracketologists had them on there and they didn't get in. So the majority kind of ruled there. So with this year's Bracket Matrix, if you took the overall average and said, Bracket Matrix says these 68 teams, according to the collective knowledge of 290 bracketologists, they say these are the 68 teams. And the NCAA committee, for the first time since 2017, said, yep, those 68.
So are bracketologists getting better at predicting what the committee looks at in values? Or is the committee looking at the same data that bracketologists are looking at and valuing?
It might be a little bit of both, because there are a lot of bracketologists who try and predict what the committee, they try and look at what the committee does. The problem being that the committee are human beings, and human beings are by rule inconsistent and unpredictable, and liable to things like having the North Carolina administrator on the committee. Because
they all have their different eye tests.
Yeah, and just straight up biases, hey, the North Carolina guy, I know we just had to send him out of the room, but are we going to pick against his team? He's our buddy. We're going to pick their team over West Virginia, even though West Virginia had the better metrics according to almost every single expert. So they're prone to that kind of unpredictability. But I think this year was also a unique case because the bubble was so bad.
Yeah.
All the teams that were on, Auburn couldn't stop tripping over itself. San Diego State, New Mexico, they couldn't stop stepping on rakes and getting in their own way. So there wasn't a whole lot of, hairs to be split between a lot of the teams. So I think it just ended up being easier to predict this year as opposed to other years. But since there is also an increase of bracketologists, and everyone's referencing, everyone sees each other's work. And obviously they like to be independent, and bracketologists do. And, I the other day I thought about, should I get into bracketology? And then I was like, no, because I just copy Bracket Matrix. I'd be I'd just be copying other people's work, and I wouldn't feel good about that. So I'm probably not going to get into the game anytime soon, but, they do a lot of work, and but with the increased amount, like it ends up kind of averaging out any extremes. And so you end up with a lot more consensus. And then, I think the NCAA is kind of respecting what they do. Again, it wasn't just the seed lines, but the literal seed list almost looked like they were copying, but it was like make it look like we didn't copy them, because you'd have like 5 or 6 teams in a row that were exactly ranked. This team's ranked 31st and this team's ranked 32nd. It's the exact same as the bracketologist seed ranking. But then like 38 and 39 would be swapped, and 42 and 43 are swapped. It does kind of look like the committee is cheating off the work of bracketologists. So they're almost feeding into each other, because the bracket matrix, the people whose brackets are on, the bracketologists, they're trying to predict the committee, but the committee might be looking at the bracketologists, and there's probably a word for that process. I don't remember which one, but it's basically it's like a snake eating its own tail. Snake eating
its tail? Yeah, there you go.
That's kind of the situation you may be in there. But like, if that's what's happening, if the committee is cheating off the work of bracketologists, I'd almost prefer that, because the bracketologists have way more passion and care for the most part, with so many of them. Like, I follow a lot of them on Twitter, and they put so much work into this. I'd kind of prefer that, because they are the college basketball junkies, and a lot of them don't have the biases that many in the committee do. So if the committee cheats off the work of bracketologists, I'm not necessarily, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, that doesn't bother me.
If you're cheating off the smartest kid in the class, is that a bad thing, other than the fact that you're cheating? But in this case, it's not really cheating.
Yeah, it's not really cheating. It's just utilizing the tools that are available to you.
Yeah. So
and the information that's out there.
Yeah. But I think this will be a kind of a one-year wonder, just because I think the situation with bracketology just kind of played itself out with the way the bubble was. I think next year we'll go back to there being a really big snub or two. But this year was just kind of interesting in the way it played out with bracketology and selecting the field.
We need to get back to the text line, but before we do that, Young Power Sports of Logan, they sponsor our text line. And want to remind you that they've got their Gear Up and Go event taking place this Saturday. It's from 11 to 6 at Young Power Sports Logan. They're pulling out everything out of the parts department, stacking it out on the sidewalk. There will be unreal blowout prices. So if you need parts, you need gear for your machines to get ready to go this spring and get ready for summer, go check it out from 11 to 6 at Young Power Sports Logan. And they sponsor our text line, 435-339-0321. 2444 texting in saying, update. I had messaged a while back asking what you guys thought the odds were of MJ Collins finishing as a top 10 single-season scorer in Utah State basketball history. May have seemed somewhat unlikely at the time, but as it stands now, he needs 36 points to tie Greg Grant at number 10 at 634, 43 points to tie Wayne Estes at number 9 with 641. If the Aggies can at least beat Villanova and play 2 tournament games, I like his chances.
Yeah, if the Aggies play 2 tournament games, then I would like his chances to reach at least number 10. Largely because if he is playing at the level the Aggies require him in order to beat Villanova,
18 a game is not abnormal.
Yeah, he'll likely hit that 20-plus mark against Villanova. It would depend on then what he does against Arizona.
It might be harder to do that against the Wildcats of Arizona.
Can you score more than 9 or 10 points against like Arizona's the type of team that can hold the Aggies in the 50s and low 60s. And when the Aggies score that low, then, nobody's really scoring a lot of points. So
yeah,
he'd need to get a lot of that work done against Villanova, and then, or maybe he'd be an outlier where maybe he scores 20 and everyone else struggles. But yeah, if he plays 2 more games, you do like his odds to at least get to number 10. If he really explodes in the first game, he could maybe even have a chance to get to number 9. But yeah, it's still a possibility.
Yeah. And then 6391, bracketology is all about predicting what the committee does, not who they think deserves to be in. And then the committee should be replaced with the top bracketologists.
Yeah, I think there's some bracketologies. I want to say Haslametrics bracketology, I think, is mostly a reflection of just his rankings. Like, his bracket had the Aggies as like a 5 or a 6 seed a lot of the year. It was a massive outlier. And it makes me think that like his isn't necessarily on the lines of predicting the committee, but most bracketologists, like a lot that I fall into, like a lot of times they'll respond to people like, they'll say, why do you have this team as a 6 seed? And it's like, it's not what I think. It's what I think the committee will do. And so there is a vast majority of bracketology. I think there is a minority that are doing this is what I think.
So they could team up and say Utah State deserves a 5 seed, and then all of them have Utah State as a 5 seed, and the committee gets together like, well, maybe we should be considering a higher seed for this team.
Maybe, because I think the bracketologists have an influence. But yeah, for the most part, 6391 is correct in that most bracketologists are indeed predicting the committee as opposed to their own opinion. But yeah, especially when you get later in the year, because early in the year, it kind of is here's what I think, and then it becomes even if they say it's not here's what I think, it's kind of what it begins as. And then it eventually becomes, once they get more and more data, that's when you can start making the real predictions as opposed to projections.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then, I think, if you replace the committee with top bracketologists, which, reminder, does not include Joe Lunardi.
No, he is not a top bracketologist. No.
If you did that, then I wouldn't necessarily have a problem. Though the only issue there is if you make, the top bracketologist, like, you could influence, and it could end up resulting in some kind of, what's the word? Like if you limit it to a certain number, like if you replace them with a top bracketologist, then it's like, you're giving a lot of influence to, I don't know who these people are. Like, do some bracketologists get introduced who aren't necessarily that great? Maybe they were copying off everybody else. Like, there's some room for issues, though no more issues than what we have with administrators doing it. So
yeah,
it's the part of the reason I kind of started going there is like, my thought was, what if we just had bracket matrix decide the tournament field? And then it's like, well, what if somebody goes rogue and has a weird bracket? Like, that's kind of that
manipulated.
That's more my main concern, I guess. Not so much the individual competency. It's just, could somebody go rogue among individual bracketologists? But if you picked the top and best bracketologists, that's an issue you probably wouldn't run into.
Yeah. Well, field is set. And pretty close to what a lot of other people thought it would be.
Very predictable field this year.
Yeah, and so now we see how it plays out. First 4 started last night, continues tonight, and then wall-to-wall coverage on the Fan on Thursday, starting at 10 a.m., going all day long into the evening. And then same thing on Friday. Utah State, they have their game at 2, well, about 2:10, 2:20, I forget which.
It's 2:10 local time, I believe.
2:10 Pacific?
I think so.
I may have been saying this wrong all along. I gotta double check this. No, it's 2:10 Mountain.
Oh, is it 2:10 Mountain? Okay.
So that's 1:10 Pacific.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
So I want to make sure you get to the arena on time.
1:10 Pacific. I'll make sure I'll show up. I'll probably show up at like noon or something like that.
But you're heading out to San Diego early in the morning.
Yep.
You'll have a chance to visit with the coaches and players of both teams, observe some practices.
Probably more Utah State, because Villanova's press conference is going to happen while I'm at Utah State's open practice. So
yes, but then we'll try to do some. We won't be on the air, but we'll still try to do some things on YouTube.
Yeah, we're going to try and check in, do this on YouTube. Play some highlights from the press conference, assuming we can get the video and get it on into our system to play it there. But yeah, looking forward to doing more remote work for the show. Should be a lot of fun.
Yes, so still able to bring some unique content, even though we won't be together in the studio or on the air. So our YouTube channel affords us to do that. So stay tuned for that, and we might even do something Saturday morning after the fact. Unfortunately, when the game is and some of the things going on Friday, it might be a challenge for us to do something shortly after the game is done. So it may be more like Saturday morning when we get together and do a recap.
I might do something on my own. We'll see. I'll be kind of winging it. So just follow us on social media, follow the YouTube channel, and you should be able to catch some content as we report and cover this NCAA tournament, hopefully an NCAA tournament run, not just an NCAA tournament appearance
Yes.
from the Aggies.
That's right. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for participating. Thanks for the text that rolled in. We'll be back on YouTube for the next couple of days. We won't be on the air at all. And next time you'll hear us on the air will be on Monday next week. But keep watching the YouTube channel and our socials for more updates for next time we'll be on here to talk about what's going on with the Aggies.